We've got
Right.
Jared from Huntsville on the line. Jared, what's your question for Dr. Keeney?
Oh, good morning, Dr. Keeney. WVU class of 2015 here. As I've been trying to listen in through here, you've obviously gone way past my knowledge of the specifics. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was taking that West Virginia history class, there was only about a paragraph in the textbook related to any of this at all. So I was really thinking more about how, and I forget where this quote comes from, but it's those who control the present change the past to control the future. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit on those through lines up until how, Central Appalachia is currently controlled by, basically a bunch of coal barons. You think about Jimmy Justice. He's, a coal baron who still owes, 115 million to Kentucky in back taxes. Mm-hmm. Then you look at the Manchin family and their connections, it's still still the coal companies holding through. And then just for a silly point, I was wondering, what's your go-to order at Tudor's?
Okay, so Tutors first. It depends. I have several different tutors, and not all tutors are created equal, by the way. And if you don't know what he's talking about, there's a place called Tudor's Biscuit World, in West Virginia, and everybody goes to Tudor's. I like the ham, egg, and cheese biscuit really well. But there's one in Chapmansville that actually has a BLT biscuit that I've been kind of hooked on lately. Bacon, lettuce, and tomato biscuit. But anyway, that's I appreciate the Tudor's question. It's still an issue in the fact, West Virginia, locally, in the last election, Republicans won by a 2-1 margin in up and down the entire ballot. And of course, they're passing a lot of laws to prevent strikes, and they're passing, or they're trying to get legislation and that's going to control the school curriculum even more. So that's not something that's gone away. And the way we've tried to rectify that is at the Mine Wars Museum, we've created a school curriculum for secondary teachers to use. It's on our website, and we host schools that come in and send their kids. So we've hosted a lot of classes that have come into the museum, give them all little red bandanas, and they take the red bandanas, and then so we're slowly making headway in all of this. I don't think it's a history that they can continually suppress. They can try to, but over the last 10 years ago, if you were in Charleston, where I live now, if you'd have said Blair Mountain, people would say, what, huh? But now if you say Blair Mountain, everybody knows what it is. And so we've made a lot of progress in a decade. And I think what you will find is in textbooks will follow in time. But it will take some time. People always say, you hear people say, well, history will not be kind to so and so. You hear people say that a lot of times. History will judge you. That's not necessarily true, because whoever really controls the power controls the history and controls the narrative. And when you look at what's been happening politically in our nation the last few years, the guys who are breaking laws and doing all this, they think that they're going to control the history. They think that they can write their own ticket, and it's kind of like West Virginia history. I've compared it to the inscriptions, the hieroglyphs that you find on a pharaoh's tomb. It's a little bit. You're only getting the Pharaoh's version of what happened in Egypt at that time. And that's kind of what we have here in West Virginia. I wonder, in fact, how many Blair Mountains throughout world history have actually happened that we'll never even know about.
Wow.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And it speaks to what we're battling and what you've battled over the years.
Jared, I think Jared hung up, right? You're not still there, are you? Yeah, he hung up, but he did have another question about what are the takeaways and tie-ins from the teachers' strike in 2018?
Again, a lot of things. First of all, a lot of these teachers, particularly in the coal fields, they have parents and grandparents that were coal miners, and some of them had parents and grandparents that were union coal miners. And even though there are very few active coal miners today that are union members in West Virginia and Kentucky, they know from what their parents and grandparents told me. This history is a tradition that up until very recently has been an oral tradition. It's been passed down, at kitchen tables, by the fireplace, at family picnics, potluck dinners, and so it's been passed down that way. So even though it's not in the books, there are people that are involved in unions that know about it from their parents and grandparents. And so they took a lot of teachers, and they took inspiration from that. There's a book called 55 Strong that's about the West Virginia teachers strike, and it's the teachers themselves that are telling the stories. And they're very frank about the idea that it's this tradition that kind of gave us it's not that the tradition started the strike, but it's a well upon which you can draw for inspiration. When you see struggles that other people have gone through in the past, it can give you a boost, a momentum, a jump start, so to speak. Many of them wore red bandanas. Many of them had signs up that recalled Blair Mountain. I was at the Capitol some of the days during the strike, and the enthusiasm and the momentum was just something like I had never seen in my lifetime as far as labor. And I was convinced that the labor movement in West Virginia was on hospice right before that strike broke out. I thought I was not hopeful regarding the labor movement, and you just suddenly had a huge outpouring, which is, of course, why the state is moving so radically to eliminate unions with right-to-work legislation. And they passed another law to try to make it illegal for any kind of work stoppages and this kind of thing. So the backlash, the political backlash is happening. But, it's just this continual ongoing struggle. And it's a part of our story. So it's not just part of West Virginia's story; it's part of America's story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got I know for a fact that there is a teacher in West Virginia that's listening to the show right now, because he was really excited, and if you want to come in, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. The phone number, call in. The phone number is 1-866-494-9866, 1-866-494-9866, and he is he's a member of his teachers union, the WVEA, and he's also a member of the IWW. What is kind of the interplay between the IWW and the mine workers unions in the Battle of Blair Mountain, and before and after? To what extent, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. The Wobblies never made a lot of headway in southern West Virginia. Although there were socialists. The UMWA collapsed after the Battle of Blair Mountain in West Virginia. My great-grandfather and Fred Mooney and Bill Blizzard, the leaders of the miners during the Armed March, were kicked out of the Union by John L. Lewis. Union membership in the state dropped from 50,000 to less than 1,000 in the 1920s. The 1920s also saw the highest rate of mine accidents in West Virginia history, over 400 deaths a year in mining accidents in the 1920s. So what happened? My great-grandfather comes back, reemerges during the Great Depression, and forms his own union, the West Virginia Mine Workers, and creates his own party, the West Virginia Labor Party. Which was a more, I would say, a little bit more radical than even the UMWA at the time. And 24,000 miners joined his union during the Great Depression. He led 3 hunger marches into Charleston, and they tried to elect more radical left-wing. So the Wobblies never actually made significant headway, but you did have an alternative unionism that formed during the Great Depression that was more socialistic in bent than the direction that John L. Lewis was taking in the UMWA, which is a more conservative business unionism.
Yeah, ultra conservative. I think he's never looked in our movement. He's never looked on highly, as far as anybody that studies labor history.
The North Alabama DSA holds a necessities drive every Saturday, and that means this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW Local 558 Union Hall on Clinton Avenue, right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805 in Huntsville. So if you're in the area, you want to drop off some clothes, some non-perishable food items, blankets, PPE, whatever, then swing by the IBEW Union Hall, right across from Yellowhammer Brewing and Campus 805 on Clinton Avenue from 3 to 5 p.m. this Saturday and every Saturday. All donations are forwarded to the Manna House. Follow at DSA North Alabama on Twitter for more information. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments that you can watch throughout the week. If you don't want to watch the whole show, just one thing maybe piques your interest, you can go watch it there. We upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. You can find our work, and you can get yourself one of these nice union-made hats with a nice union bug right here beside our logo. I love it. It's really, it's a really good hat, just aside from it having our logo on it. It's really nice. I like it. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.